Well, welcome in at long last to another episode of the Storyworld Podcast. Steve Schramm here with my boy Al. What's up, Al?
I'm excited for tonight, although it feels like we should have been done with this parable session when we started at the beginning of the year for our second year going into this. Feels like it's been strung along for a while, but it's been a good series, I think.
No, it has been. It has been good. I'm excited to, all good things come to an end. So we are working on our actual last parable tonight, right? This is our last one. And then I think next we might, I think we talked about doing an episode about the purpose of parables, which it might be kind of weird that we didn't do that to start with, but like there's a reason for it because parables maybe aren't what you think, to tease that for next time. So, so we can talk a little bit about like why Jesus used parables and what the Bible actually says that the purpose of parables are. But for tonight, we're going to be talking about another one of my favorite parables in the Bible. It's weird to say that though, right? Because like a lot of parables, including this one, are a little bit depressing, right? Like, are you allowed to have a favorite depressing parable? I mean, I guess, because I do. So.
I mean, people have favorite depressing movies and favorite depressing friends, so might as well have your favorite depressing parable.
Mm-hmm. And actually, that might be a good point. So there's a couple like Bible nerd things to talk about on this one. One of them being there are some people who I think question, right? I think this is the one, right? That a lot of people question whether this one even is a parable. I think there are some people who actually think this story, Jesus was telling the story of somebody that actually happened. And then there are other people who believe it's a parable. I don't know the evidence for either side, but it's kind of fascinating that there are some who come down on the fact that this is not a parable. So.
Do you have a opinion or lean slightly one way or the other? I've always assumed that it's based on something real just because you kind of hear the trope like, oh, well, this is the only parable where he actually named someone specifically. But the more I read it, it seems like just a very good parable. But I'm not convinced of that. That's just kind of what I lean towards.
I think the thing that makes it feel less like a parable to me is the specificity about this person's family member who had Moses and the prophets, as we're going to see in this parable, who, it seems to be talking about a real person in the past who had access to information about who Jesus was. And so you don't really see that specificity in the other parables, especially the ones that we covered. I mean, I don't off the top of my head, I'm not sure that you can point to any one of them and say, there's something specific about this parable that, they all do feel rather generic in a way that this one doesn't. So that is something fascinating. So I've always leaned on the side of, I've never come down hard on, it really happened or it's a parable. I'm just kind of like, it feels more like it's based on reality. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I get that.
So,
I'm not going to say you're not a Christian either way. So,
well, I appreciate you giving me the benefit of the doubt there.
No problem.
So this one is in Luke chapter 16 and verses 19 through 31. And Alex, if you want to just read the little description that we have here, that would be great.
Yep, absolutely. The Gospel of Luke, Jesus tells the tale of two men, a nameless rich man and a poor beggar named Lazarus. The rich man lives in opulence, feasting daily, while Lazarus, covered in sores, lies at his gate, yearning for mere crumbs. Upon their deaths, their fates reverse. Lazarus is escorted by angels to paradise, resting beside Abraham. In contrast, the rich man is tormented in Hades. I think maybe we just start there. I know there's more to it, but...
Yeah. So taking it in strides a little bit. Yeah, I'm down with that. Yeah. So, so this is interesting. You've got Hades and paradise. This is actually something that a lot of people have questions about. Where are they right now? Right? What happens when you die? I thought that the Bible said that to be absent with the body is to be present with the Lord. So what's going on there? And now, I could put you on the spot a little bit here, Alex. Do you have any thoughts or opinions about what's going on there? Or do you know, or have you ever thought about it?
I have no thoughts or opinions of anything that happens before Revelation. So Revelation is what I have Spot on. Actually, no.
That's hilarious.
Actually, no. I don't with this one. I have not done my research well enough to give an adequate answer on what's happening.
Yeah. So, Paul says that to be absent with the body is to be present with the Lord. And so the hope of the Christian is that wherever you are, when you die, you are with Jesus. There are a lot of people who think, and this is a bigger topic than we can cover in the parable, right? But there are a lot of people who sort of have the impression that when you die, you go to a quote unquote heaven. And that is partially true, partially not true. For example, we don't have any sort of, at least there's no indication that we have any sort of body immediately when we die, right? Because we're going to be reunited with our bodies and made glorified. We will have glorified resurrection bodies. And so by all indications, when we die, we are sort of in this intermediary state where our soul lives on, but it's detached from our body. So we live on in some sort of immaterial sense. And so, I just to use a specific example, I remember lots of people saying when my grandfather died, oh, well, he's finally up there with his brother Bob, fishing. And I bet they're fishing right now, or like strolling down the streets of gold and like talking. And okay, the reality is that from the biblical data, we can't really say that. It doesn't appear that we're at that point yet. And so what's going on? Well, what could be going on here? So notice that you got sort of paradise and Hades. So these are basically, if you understand sort of the Jewish worldview and mindset, these are basically two compartments of the underworld. Okay, so in the Jewish world, you went to the underworld called Sheol, right? You went to the underworld, the grave, the pit, and there were a few different compartments in the grave and the pit. One was called Hades. That was the compartment where the bad people went, right? One was called a paradise, which is kind of a name given to the compartment where the righteous went. You even had a compartment called Tartarus, which is mentioned in Jude and First Peter, and this is where the angels that sinned, Genesis 6 stuff before the flood, where they are, the Bible says, imprisoned in chains of gloomy darkness. And so you have a few different chapters in sort of the whole Jewish conception of the underworld. One of the things, so like for a Jew, their idea was that you went to paradise and there was one resurrection. In the final resurrection, at the very end of days, when the new Messiah came, whoever that is, the Jews would be captured. They had the hope of being captured out of Sheol, out of the grave, and then made to live with the Father. Now, of course, they don't believe in Jesus. At least they don't believe that Jesus was the Jewish Messiah. And so I'm a little unclear on this, I have to be honest, but my understanding is that sort of the mainstream view of this is, especially if you're a Christian, or like if you're a Christian, you probably don't think about this very much, but especially if you're a Messianic Jew, you have sort of this notion that when the Messiah came, that did happen. And so when the Messiah was murdered on the cross, when Jesus was murdered, you remember that is it First Peter that mentions this in that same sort of passage where it talks about how he basically descended into the lower parts of the earth. So he descended into one of these compartments, Tartarus, and preached liberation to the captives. Basically what he did was he went down there and said, nanny, nanny, boo, boo, I want it, you guys lost, right? He preached to the imprisoned spirits that were that are held in chains of gloomy darkness, said, nanny, nanny, boo, boo, I won, you guys lost, sorry. And then I believe the mainstream belief is that at that point, those who were in the underworld, in paradise, the righteous, were then from that point with Christ after he ascended to the right hand of the Father, now are with Christ. And so to be with him, what did Jesus say to the thief on the cross? Today you shall be with me in paradise, right? There's the mention of paradise again. Again, paradise in their thinking here is not the streets of gold, heaven, the final resurrection, new earth, new Jerusalem, new heavens, and all of that. It's this compartment of the underworld. And so is that where Jesus is today? That's arguable, right? The Bible doesn't really tell us. It's just that wherever believers are, they're wherever Jesus is. Is that paradise? Is that some alternate dimension and they've all been snatched out of paradise? I think what I've described is basically the mainstream sort of Jewish view. And then the unrighteous dead, if you will, are in Sheol, in whatever, in Hades. Presumably that still exists wherever, does it have latitude and longitude? I don't know. But apparently that is a realm that exists where the unrighteous dead are. And then in the final resurrection, of course, we will be made to live in the new heavens and the new earth with glorified resurrected bodies. And the unrighteous dead, those who never trusted in Christ, will eventually be cast into the lake of fire, et cetera, et cetera. That's sort of mainstream biblical teaching. So that was a little bit of a diatribe, but there's a lot going on there in this little parable.
Everything you just said was exactly what I was thinking.
Oh, perfect. Well, that settles it, Ben.
Yeah, I should have just answered the question when you asked me.
It must be accurate. It must be accurate.
No, it's interesting. Yeah. What's funny is just because we're paralleling stuff, how much of a backstory and world building that is to a whole mindset, to a culture and a people, and maybe even reality in a lot of different respects. So that's really interesting.
Well, it speaks to how cool the Bible is too, because there is, especially as we keep going here, there is a theological point to this parable that is unrelated to all the like nitty gritty details of that, but like the details make the Bible so cool, and so there's lots to talk about there. So I like the details.
Yep, absolutely. So going now, focusing to the current state of Lazarus and the rich man. Desperate, the rich man beseeches Abraham, asking for Lazarus to bring a drop of water for relief. Abraham highlights the chasm between them, noting the rich man's past comfort and Lazarus' suffering. No one can cross this divide. In a final plea, the rich man asks for Lazarus to be sent to warn his brothers of this fate. Abraham retorts, they have the teachings of Moses and the prophets. If they won't heed those warnings, they wouldn't even if someone were to rise from the dead. There's a lot of interesting things that I notice here. It kind of paints a picture. You almost envision Lazarus and in Hades and whatever that looks like on one side, and then this big chasm, whether it's a physical, it almost is described as physical, or however you want to project it. Paradise on the other. It's obviously a situation where the rich man can see Lazarus in whatever type of space that's in. And we don't we almost think of a permanent, or kind of referring to what you were talking to before, you almost think of a permanent separation. Here's, the quote unquote, the good, the just, the righteous, those who have been redeemed by Jesus. And then you have everyone else, and then that's that. But it seems to be some type of connection here where at least the rich man is able to see Lazarus.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that feeds into what I was talking about with the Jewish worldview of the underworld, right? The underworld has these compartments, and at least in this expression of it, which I'm not, I won't pretend that I'm like super familiar with other expressions of it, but at least in this expression of it, you almost have this idea where it's like, I don't know, not double-pane glass, double-sided glass or anything like that, but like you almost have like this glass almost divide between them where they can see each other and even interact, even though you can't cross that chasm. It's really interesting. Maybe to a little bit more context with Abraham, right? This area of paradise, etc., is also referred to as Abraham's bosom in the scriptures, and so that's a terminology that you'll hear sort of used for this. But what you just described is basically the main, the main theological thrust of the passage. Basically, had the rich man known that it was going to be this way in the afterlife, he would have maybe made some different choices. And it gets worse when he asks Abraham to go warn his brothers and his family and all. And he's like, well, but they already have Moses and the prophets. They had the same opportunity to read things that I did or that you did. And so why believe, like, even if someone were to rise from the dead and go tell them, they wouldn't believe. And isn't that so fascinating that that's basically what happened with Jesus, right? It's like if you didn't believe Moses and the prophets, you're probably not going to believe when Jesus rises from the dead either. And of course, we find a lot of Jews in that situation where they don't believe Jesus rose from the dead. And so this story sort of illustrates that it's almost kind of meta in that sense, right?
Yeah, I agree with you there. One thing that I find interesting is that Abraham does all the answering for Lazarus. I don't know what there is to glean from that, but it's just kind of interesting how I don't know if Lazarus can even hear the rich man or see him, or obviously
that's a good point.
The rich man is addressing Lazarus, but it's Abraham that's answering every single time. I don't really know what kind of significance.
I never thought about that. Yeah.
I mean, any reason would just be just speculation. It doesn't say why that is, but yeah, it's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, it is kind of interesting. But it's like I was just talking to you about this recent clip of Joe Rogan basically going on for like a minute on his podcast explaining how great it would be if you had like a manual that tells you exactly how to operate a human, like how should a human live, what should a human do, what does the peak performance look like, all this stuff. He did not say a single thing that is not answered in the Bible, right? The Bible actually gives you the answers to literally every single thing he asked for. Now, I get that there's a lot of religious books that like talk to themes like that. I mean, I get it, but still the point shouldn't be missed that like you do have people who are asking for a manual of how to do life. And it's like, that's what this is. And even people like Jordan Peterson are an interesting case because Jordan Peterson, at least as of this recording, and as far as I know, is not himself a Christian, but views the Bible as a sort of ascended wisdom of some sort that is at that level of like, this basically is a manual for the right way to live. For this, like the Bible is how you life as a human and do it successfully, even though he somehow holds that belief without even being a committed believing in God, if you will, as a real entity. So it's real fascinating stuff how real and timely like this parable is even in our day.
Yeah, absolutely. It after kind of getting through all that, those are kind of what I think is the interesting points, talking about looking at it from a story perspective. And then you get to the theological and spiritual implications of it. And then it just kind of gets into the things that we kind of all know, and almost speaks to, treat your neighbor as yourself. The first shall be last and the last first. I'm not sure if there's too much there to hash out there, but it just kind of goes again to teaching the lessons that we're all familiar with. Yeah, well, it's back to the theme of so the other day I was watching, there's an interview you can find online. It's Greg Kokel, who is a good author, Christian apologist, and speaker. And he is, it's like this hour-long conversation where Lee Strobel is the host. And it's like him and Deepak Chopra. And they're going back and forth. And, like Deepak wants to be, I learned things from all religions, love and compassion are the ultimate, whatever. And Greg's like, I know, I understand that. To a certain point, I even agree with you. The question is, where do you get your religious beliefs from, and why, like, you're still saying that your beliefs are correct, and yet I'm doing the same thing, except I'm actually providing a foundation for them. And you're saying that I'm being hateful and exclusive and all of that. And so I think the point I'm trying to underscore there is that even if you have these good things, like, it talks about, the earthly wealth and being the rich man on earth and being, like you said, being first on earth.
has nothing to do with how you're treated in the afterlife. Literally nothing. I mean, you can be richer than God, to use a turn of phrase, and be a fine Christian and have, and be, well done, thou good and faithful servant, in the afterlife, and that's totally fine. Or you can be the poorest of the poor, right? It doesn't matter for that, which is why anyone who places their faith and their trust in the wealth or satisfaction or what am I looking for somebody to like praise them, the esteem, if you will, of the world. If you spend all your time working on that, then again, that is passing. It's transient. It doesn't mean anything in the afterlife. And that's what the rich man learned in this parable. And the one thing that mattered, he learned that once it was too late, there's nothing you could do about. So It's very important stuff.
Yeah, I agree, Steve.
And let me make one more point. This is why we see these themes in stories, right? Mm-hmm. So talking about the story side of things, it's like, again, there's a reason why these sorts of themes are the ones that get us going. They're the ones that make us emotionally buy into a story. We want the good guy to win. We want to be saved. All of those sort of things. You see that here. It's like you can make fun of religion all you want to, but when you go to the movies every week or like watch a show on Netflix or whatever, you're seeing this same stuff played out in regular everyday life. The only question from the worldview perspective is, do you have a basis, a foundation for it? Or do you just think it because you saw it on a TV show or whatever? And so the Christian wants to say, well, we have a basis and a foundation for it. It's because God cares about these things. So I think it's fascinating.
It's funny too how like if you look at your most popular shows and movies, it's typically like your Marvel stuff where it's not even gray, like it's black and white. You have your good guys and you have your bad guys. And even though there might be some stumbling blocks on the way, the good guys are always going to win. The bad guys are always end up losing, yet you still watch it because it's what people like to see. Yeah.
And even if they make the spoiler alert for Ahsoka, even if they make the bad guy win temporarily, the point is at the light side. And look, that's actually a really good segue, a really good point, because I saw in one of the videos that I was watching after I watched the last episode of Ahsoka, George Lucas accepting an award earlier on for one of the things that he did, talking about, his idea behind the Force. And, so the way that the Star Wars series seem to be going now is really getting more into the fact that the Force is in everyone. And rather than just like only certain kinds of people or special people or like tuned to it, there are people who are more attuned to it than others, of course, but like they're leaning more into this idea that anyone who trains hard enough and who opens their mind enough can get access to the Force. And it's like in George Lucas's mind, the Force was to the extreme dark side, selfishness, and to the extreme light side, compassion. And look, I'm sure George Lucas is no Christian, but how can you have a more Christian theme than that? The controlling, I'm just going to use the word force, just go with it, okay? The controlling force of the universe pulls toward compassion for other people or selfishness, right? And that is the Christian message at its very core, starting in Genesis 3. And so there it is. It's in everything that you see, and it's inescapable. Anyway, I could say a lot more, but I'm going to shut up there.
Yes. Please do, Steve. I'm just joking.
Screw you.
All right. I think that moves us along to story of the week then.
Yeah. I guess you can talk now.
I'll talk for 10 seconds. So my story of the week, I guess it's kind of a story, kind of cool. My wife won tickets to go see the NASCAR playoff race. I guess they call it the playoffs in NASCAR this Sunday. And I follow it by default of living in Mooresville, North Carolina, barely enough. So I sound intelligent when someone brings it up.
I'm not sure how intelligent you sound. Do they really call it the playoffs? I don't think they do. Do they?
Yeah, they do. I'm pretty sure they do.
They do?
Yeah, let me take a look.
Really?
Series NASCAR Cup playoffs. Yeah,
do they really call it?
They have, like,
yeah, okay, they do.
Yeah.
I'm the idiot, turns out. Cool.
Yeah, they got the playoff standings. So anyway, the person who's number one in the playoff standings right now is William Byron, and he went to Liberty, and like Liberty sponsors him. He has the LU car and everything. And so that kind of gets me a little bit more intrigued with it, just kind of following him. So he's barely in first place. So I am actually really looking forward to it, going and watching. I think might be watching more of the crowd behavior than the actual race. Something tells me I'll find that very interesting. But so I'm looking forward to it. It's at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, and yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
That is so cool. I mean, you'll have to let me know how those left turns go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, this one, I've been watching the F1 documentary on Netflix, which is phenomenal. It's super good. And fortunately, it looks like that the Charlotte Speedway, at least for this race, has quite a few actual like twists and turns with only one straightaway. And so I'm hoping that's what it's set up to be. Because you're right, I can get impressed by pretty much everyone who's a master at their craft, but it's hard to just stay engaged with a loop-de-loop. Again, the F1 documentary is really good, and I think I'm expecting this race to be good as well. So,
yeah, that was an old Jim Gaffigan comedy bit. They're making a left turn. Like, how exciting! Oh, you know what? It might have been Jeff Dunham. It was Jeff Dunham with his Bubba, I think. Thing. Anyway, they're making a left turn. It's so exciting. So anyway, not into the NASCAR thing, but there was a time when I was not into the UFC either. And Alex, you changed everything for me on that. So
that's true. I might maybe I'll save you the suffering of getting involved in NASCAR.
I would deeply appreciate that.
You got
it. Is it my turn?
It is your turn. It is your turn.
So I am down 11 pounds, and that's exciting. Me and Alex always love to talk about weight loss things, and he likes to run. He's a sadistic animal, but he likes to run, and we like to eat meat and talk about meat, and so that's fun. So I've been using the Lose It app, and it's been out forever. But it's like MyFitnessPal, except I used to think it was worse, and now it's like way better, in my opinion, than MyFitnessPal. Gives you some really nice insights and walks you through things. And the coolest thing that it does, so the other day I was watching just a video. It was a short video. It was actually, ironically, the video was in conjunction with another app. By the way, so if you're going to tune out right now, okay, fine. But if you ever want to lose weight, don't tune out, because I think I have an insight to share with you. Okay, so here's the thing. I was watching this video, and he talked about the 3 levers. His name is Dr. Peter Attia. He's actually making the rounds on all the podcasts and shows, and he's got a really good book called Outlive. It's about the science of longevity. So he's a longevity doctor, and he talks about the 3 levers of metabolic health that you can pull at any one time, depending on the state of your metabolic health and weight you need to lose and all of those things. You may have to pull 2 or even 3 of those levers all at the same time. And so the levers are CR, TR, and DR. Calorie restriction, time restriction, and dietary restriction, right? So I've never thought about it like this, because, all the fad diets sort of sell their own little thing, right? And so for a while, I was on keto. I'm still on keto, but I've been doing keto 90% of my life since late 2015, early 2016. And I had an initial push where I lost about 60 pounds, and then I gained back about 20. And that's where I've been literally for the last 6 years or so, 6 or 7 years at this point. I just never have been able to really crack that plateau. And so since the 23rd of September, we're recording this on October 5th. Since the 23rd of September, I lost 11 pounds to date. And really, it's back to good old fashioned. I can't believe I'm saying this. If you're in the keto world, these are like, fighting words. Good old fashioned calorie counting. But what's cool about this app is it gives you the context for everything right there. And so I am looking at my fasting, which is time restricted feeding, right? The TR. I'm looking at my dietary. So it's automatically got the whole app configured in a way to talk to me intelligently because I'm doing keto. So it knows that. So it shows me net carbohydrates. It factors in all my goals for that. It shows me the right foods. It adjusts my nutrition plan based on that. Everything based on the fact that I want to eat keto. And if you don't want to eat keto, fine. It'll adjust to whatever you want to do. But also, it has the context, of course, of the calorie counting. And so just the basic science, calories in, calories out. I mean, even though it's a little more complicated than that. But so basically, I am looking at a holistic view of my health, and I can pull on whatever lever I need to make it all work. And right now I'm pulling on all 3 levers. And guess what? My weight is dropping at I think my rate is an average of 3.7 pounds per week right now, that my weight is dropping by pulling all 3 of these levers at the same time. I'm still eating keto. I'm still getting full. I'm just doing a lot less snacking and just keeping everything within the numbers. And it gives you this great dashboard and all your progress tracking and milestones. It's really great. So for me, what's working is this combination of this idea of pulling the 3 levers and then using the Lose It app. That really makes you able to see all of this stuff at a glance and in a really, really helpful way, and makes it super easy to track. And honestly, I've just sort of created this arbitrary rule for myself that there are no such things as cheat days. But the reason is because I can always pull one of the levers, right? So even if I have a day where I want to just go, hey, we're going to have Carrabba's that evening or whatever, I know if I eat Carrabba's, I'm probably going to go over on my calories and my carbs, but I can at least fast that day, right? I can at least get a 16-hour fast in that day and then eat whatever I want to that night, and then back on track so you never feel like you're deviating off the plan, because the plan's always in front of you. It's just which levers are you pulling today? And if you're in sort of actively trying to lose weight, then you're probably going to be pulling all 3 levers for a period of time until you get to where you want to be. And then you can sort of let up on things as it adjusts. But I don't know. I think it's one of the most powerful concepts because it just gets rid of all of the fad stuff. It's just math and science at that point. If you pull all 3 of these levers, your body has to get where it needs to be, because your body is made to do that. It's made to put itself into homeostasis at that level. And if you're just keeping the numbers right based on where you're at, then you'll get there. So I thought that was really, really interesting. It's been really helpful for me.
That's cool. Cheers to 11 down and 11 more to come.
11, yeah, and more, and many more, because I'm trying to get to, I'm at 233 right now, 233.3, and the goal is 185.
Nice.
So I've never been. I was that low in 4th grade. So it's been. So that happen? I
was in kindergarten.
Basically, yeah. So anyway, that's my long story of the week.
Awesome. Good story of the week, Steve.
Cool. It's exciting.
I think that's all we have for everyone.
I think that's it. Yeah. That's all, folks. All right. Well, God bless you guys. Thank you for hanging out. Next time we're going to talk about, I think, the purpose behind parables and why Jesus told parables.
We got another movie night coming up in a couple weeks, and then I think Steve and I we've kind of honed in on the parables and some biblical stuff, and I think we're really going to switch gears. And Steve has kind of brought up maybe doing a book, kind of not read through, but analysis of reading it together and going through it. Just kind of think of some fun things to go over. If there's anything you want to hear us talk about, and drop a comment.
I tell you what I'd like to do, and this is in the nonfiction realm, but it's really inspiring. I'd love to talk about the Elon Musk book at some point in the future. I'm really enjoying that.
Yep.
His biography.
Perfect. All right, Steve. All right. Until next time.
All right, my friends. You guys take care. Don't forget to share it with your friends. Hide your kids. Hide your wife. All that good stuff. We'll talk to you later.